Hey, I'm John from Just Whiskey. If you like today's show, please give it the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Speaking of subscribers, thanks for all the new subscribers coming on board. I really appreciate the support. This is going to be my Whiskey of the Year show. We're gonna have some fun, and we're gonna go through quite a bit of whiskeys. And remember, it's just whiskey, folks. Which brings me to the subject of subjective. Roy Aquaviti did a recent show, and he talked about him and some of his pals did a blind tasting. And in that blind tasting was a Springbank 18 and a generic low-cost blended scotch called Glasshouse, I believe from Loch Lomond, but I'm not positive. And out of all the tastings that they did, they tied Springbank 18 equal to, or almost equal to, a kind of a generic blended Glasshouse. So the truth comes out with blind tastings. Speaking of blind tastings, Whiskey Mystery did a very recent, really incredible rundown featuring the Brora 38-year-old against a lineup of similar profiled scotches. And at the end of their review, they tied the Brora 38-year-old, which they paid $2,500 for, which I think might even be going for double that right now, to the Flaming Heart, Compass Box Flaming Heart. This particular bottle I have in my hand is the 15th anniversary edition, which Ralphie gushed about, raved about, and rated it a 91. The Flaming Heart that Whiskey Mystery had, I'm not sure if it was this version of the Flaming Heart, but basically, they were saying that, a Brora 38-year-old compared to a blended Compass Box were pretty damn close in their enjoyment level, and the Compass Box version they had, I think, might have been $120, $130, maybe $140. But what's interesting is what they said on that channel was, out of the $2,500 they paid for the Brora 38, he honestly felt that $2,000 of that price you're paying for the history of that bottle, and maybe $500 of that was an enjoyment. So I thought that was revealing. So that's that. Okay, we cleared a little bit of room there. Also, too, speaking of that Brora 38, Jeremy from Sippers Social Club, at the time that he reviewed it, he gave it like a 95 or 96 and said it was the best whiskey experience that he had had up to the date of his video. He has since kind of, him and Whiskey in the Six recently had an extraordinary experience, drinking an 80-year-old whiskey, which we're not going to get into. We just don't have the time. And then, speaking of subjectivity, Lagavulin 11-year Guinness cask finish. I love this. You can see this box is empty. Out of the whole year of 2021, I went through this bottle faster than any other bottle, and I did share it. But still, I went through it, and I have a couple of backups for it. I really enjoyed it, but as an example, the Whiskey Tube channel, Scots for Dummies, they didn't really dig it at all. They gave it very low scores. Out of the four of them, I think one of them really didn't like it at all. I mean, gave it an abysmal low score, and he might even said something like, one of the worst things he's ever had, or not worth reviewing, kind of thing. But even the most optimistic person on their channel described it as, very good, but he didn't give it, a 4-star rating. But as a group, they were kind of, they didn't really care for it. Conversely, Whiskey Advocate magazine, rated this as the #1 whiskey of the year for 2021. So there we go with subjectivity. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have 2 whiskeys of the year. How can that be, you say? I am going to have a peated and an unpeated. So I'm going to have an unpeated whiskey of the year and a peated whiskey of the year. In no particular order, I'm just going to kind of run through and really briefly talk about some of the highlights of the year, and why they weren't really part of the runner-up, but they need to be at least talked about or acknowledged. Old Potently 17, discontinued, I think in 2017 or 18. You can't get it anymore. So, I want my whiskey of the year to be available. So I really enjoyed Old Potently 17. Old version of Highland Park 12, before their Viking Honor. This bottle that I reviewed, goes back several years ago, 8 years ago, I forget exactly. I really enjoyed that. The Aaron 14, great dram. Aaron discontinued that. I have a couple of backup bottles, but you might be able to find it in the wild still, but it is discontinued. All right, on the peated side, if I had to pick, probably, now Springbank is peated, but it's not heavily peated. But the Springbank 12-year-old, if it was widely available, it would probably be my peated whiskey of the year, but it's not. So it's very, very hard to get. Same thing as Springbank 10, great dram, but it's just so challenging to get. Same thing with Long Row heavily peated. This is just a very underrated, super quality NAS, heavily peated. Thoroughly enjoy this dram. Then we have, Lafroig 10 cask strength and Lafroig 10 sherry oak. This sherry oak is amazing. It's really good. I didn't put Lafroig on the list because it is available, but it is such a unique, intense, probably the most medicinal, one of the most medicinal, intense whiskeys. It might not be for everybody, so I didn't put that in my whiskey of the year. Then we have, Ardbeg 10, great. And Lagavulin 8, I'll tell you, for the money, $45 to $55. Great dram. I recently I feel like a chump, really, for this Talisker 8-year-old. I paid $115 for it. Way overpriced for what you get. But, I really wanted to try it, and it is one of the most briny, saltiest, puckering, astringent. But, it's not worth the money. And, this is an 8-year-old. The Lagavulin 8-year-old, you can buy the Lagavulin 8-year-old for way less than half the price of the Talisker, way less than half the price of the Talisker 8-year-old. And this is, very hard to find, but I did a review on it, but I'm ashamed that I bought it, to be honest with you. It's different. It is very young. It's an experience, um, but it's not worth the price tag on it. All right, now let's get into our core lineup here. We're going to start with the peated side, since I think I reviewed more peated whiskeys this year than I did unpeated. Um, I have to be honest, for reachability, had not Whiskey Advocate magazine picked this as number one, this would have been, right up there for enjoyment and price value ratio, quality. Um, I really enjoyed that. Um, Ardbeg Corey Reckon, that was in the lineup too, as a runner-up. For $70-$80, great, heavily peated, smoky, um, high proof, almost cask strength, if not cask strength, well into the 50% ABV. That was a runner-up for peated. Okay, Octomore 10.2. It's expensive, so I can't pick this as whiskey of the year. It is this 10.2. I've had the 7.4, which was virgin oak, and it was okay. I've had the 9.1, 9.3. Both of those were very good, but so far this Octomore 10.2 has been my favorite Octomore that I've had. I think it's really good, but for $250 to $300, I cannot pick that as whiskey of the year. Toreveg, Alt Glaun on the Isle of Skye, non-age stated. I really, really, really like this dram. Can't speak highly enough of it. It is an NAS. It is a little bit on the youthful side. Really like it, and I think it's in today's market. It's priced somewhat fairly. All right, so there's no surprise here. My peated whiskey of the year is Lecheg 10. Non-chill filtered, no coloring added. There are batch variations, but still, for $50 to $60 US, this is, in my opinion, best high quality, age stated, non-chill filtered, no coloring added, peated, complex dram that you're going to find. So Lecheg 10 is my peated whiskey of the year from the Isle of Mull. Again, batch variations can and will happen. All right, now over to this side, which is a much smaller pile, and I'm going to spread these out. And what's interesting about this lineup right here is this morning I had someone help me with a blind tasting. It was late morning, so it was close to noon. And I did a blind tasting of all four of these, and I guessed every one of them exactly what they were. I hope I'm not giving anything away, but Maltbox just did his whiskey of the year, and I'll tell you, this was a contender. The Compass Box Orchard House. For the money, it's a Compass Box. It's a non-age stated blend. picture, a fruit basket of apples and pears. Um, it's, for 45 to $50, and this is part of their core range. You cannot go wrong with this, and this does have the reachability factor. I bought a couple of backup bottles for this. Um, excellent, excellent dram, but it is on the youthful side, and it is going up against some big boys. Aaron 10 has been talked about enough and too much, all for good reason. This is the older version of Aaron 10. Highly recommend it to anybody. The price is still reasonable. You really get apple notes, green apple notes, as a prominent nose and tasting experience with this. But it's been, I just, Ralphie's already voted it, in the past as Whiskey of the Year. So, and the Oscars have voted it as Whiskey of the Year. So it is good. So now we're down to two. Glencadam Clynelish 14. If Ralphie did not pick the Glencadam 15 as his Whiskey of the Year, then I would have. But I don't want to be a copycat. This is my opinion, a masterpiece of a dram. It is beautiful, complex. You've got the 15-year maturation, age stated, non-chill filtered, no coloring added. It is challenging to find. So for those reasons, I'm out. If you watch Shark Tank, you know what I mean about that. Which leaves, and me, I'm like the underdog, the rebel, and I kind of like to go against the grain. And I know some of you are saying, what? A Diageo product? But let me tell you, for a non-peated, accessible dram, 46% ABV, there is no mention of color or chill filtration, but it very well might have coloring in it. But in my opinion, I don't think it's chill filtered. And I don't think any Diageo products label that as such. And I think they're just, they're hedging their bets, and they don't want to be, they just don't want to start with that whole thing. But the reason, and I've talked about it in my review, when I pour this and let it sit out, pour a drop of water in it, let it get a little cold, it clouds up. I get the Scotch mist, which are examples of it not being chill filtered. But even if it is, this is widely available. Clynelish, 14-year-old. Coastal Highland malt, and I paid, I can't get it anymore, but just 6 months ago, I bought 3 bottles of it for $45. It goes between $60 and $70 in my area. Even if it's more than that, in my opinion, you're paying $60 to $70 for a 14-year-old high-quality Scotch whiskey that has elements of older, aged whiskeys in this, in my opinion. But just compare this to something like the Balvenie 14 Week of Peat, which you're going to spend close to $100 for. And then Bunnahabhain 12 is about $60. So, for 2 more years than Bunnahabhain, you're paying another $5 or $10, $15 more. And this is a very, candle waxy on the nose, very fruity. The finish is more in the medium not necessarily the medium long finish, closer to the medium finish. I really like this. I gave it high ratings, and it is um, fairly um, fairly accessible. You can find this if you look. So, and the same thing with Lecheg. This happens to be the older bottling, um, and I'm sure there's batch variations with the older bottling, but the current bottle that I have open of each one of these, I prefer the older bottling than the newer one. But again, there's probably another batch that's out there that's fine. And that is what's in my glass right now. Lecheg 10. This is the older bottling that I'm drinking right here. All these whiskeys that I've talked about, I've reviewed, and so you can look them all up on my channel. I really hope you enjoyed the show. I know I did, and thanks for everyone coming on board. I really appreciate the support. Please subscribe. And what my plan is for next year is, up until December, I pretty much did a review every single week. And the month of December, I tried to kind of compete with the people doing the advent calendars. So I was trying to do a bottle almost every day in December. So I did quite a few reviews in December. It's just basically me drinking all this. So my goal and mission statement for 2022 is I am going to slow down with the volume or the quantity of reviews, and they will be a little less frequent. I don't really want to put, say one a month or one every 2 weeks. I'm not quite sure yet. But basically, I want to practice what I preach and enjoy what I have. I have 50 bottles open, and I just can't really I can maintain it, but I can't really justify opening a bottle a week. Because after 2 years, I'd have well over 100 bottles, opened up. And so that's unsustainable. So there will be less reviews, and I am going to be focusing next year on more independent bottlings. Personally, I think that's where the best bang for your buck is, because a lot of these independent bottlings, you can get single casks, which are just I've really had some really good ones that in samplings that I have bought bottles of, and we're going to be really having some really good whiskeys next year. So there'll be less of them, but next year we're going to be reviewing Lecheg 10. I mean Lecheg 10, Lecheg 18, Talisker 18, and a lot of independent bottlings, just to name a couple there. So again, I don't want to keep this any longer than what it is. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's to everybody. Stay safe, and hats off to you all, and take care.